Well, good evening everybody, and welcome to our SLL event about lighting controls. It's very nice to have this hosted here at Arup's main offices. Lighting controls are things that are constantly changing. There are some protocols like 1 to 10 volts that remain the same for years and years, and others that are being developed all the time. We're going to be talking about some of the new developments later on. To begin with, I'd just like to show you a couple of slides. One of the biggest complaints about lighting design by members of the public controls are when lights are on during the day. So however complicated a lighting scheme is, it should always switch itself off during the day. So it's something to bear in mind. It's always good to start with a rhetorical question. Our first speaker is Innessa Demidova, who works here for Arup in London. She's got a background in spatial design and critical thinking, and her main interest is providing meaningful lighting design serving people and places. She's going to be asking, is control part of lighting design? Thank you.
But not to this one.
I think it's just so this one here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Hi everyone. So my name is Innessa Demidova, and as Peter just said, I'm a designer here at Arup. And I'm going to have a fairly short presentation basically about my life through the lens of lighting controls. We're going to talk about a little bit of education, a little bit of practice, and the reflection. So I started not that long ago, and I thought, well, I'm a lighting designer now, because I used to not be a lighting designer. I don't have a specific education in lighting design, I have an education in design. So lighting controls seem quite important. I was like, how do you do this? And they're like, okay, you speak to people in the industry, and they say, well, speak to this guy over there. Speak to this guy over there. That guy is the god of lighting controls. You try to maybe speak to them, and they realize there's only like 3 people in the industry. Everybody thinks they're gods of lighting control and don't reply to your emails. Then what do you do? Well, maybe you go back and do a little bit of reading, do a bit more of reading, maybe a bit more of reading, a bit more of reading. There's not a lot of reading in the handbook, which everybody tells you to do. Then a bit more and more and more and more. Becomes a bit much, becomes more confusing. Those things are quite disparate, sometimes don't relate to each other. So, and it never ends, and adds more confusion. And then, well, after a while you kind of try to make sense of it all, despite how unapproachable it seems. And then you think, well, can I design now? Do I know enough about lighting controls? And then some lighting control people send you this. And the architect calls you and says, there's an exploded robot on the drawing. What do we do? You're like, well, most of it I can understand, some of it not really. And you're like, oh, okay. Maybe you need more practical stuff. Well, do we have enough time to play? Do we have enough time to test things? Are we encouraged to do the commissioning, be on site doing the controls? Well, no. Not enough. And not a lot. And especially when you're in a junior positions working on the project I used to work, a bit too little and a bit too late. And that was one of the reasons where I was actively prohibited in a way to be playing with lighting controls in my spare time outside of commissioning, where I realized that maybe that was not, I need more time. And then I was like, oh, that's kind of sad. But then Arup came along and somebody told me there's some fantastic place in Arup where you can just play with lighting controls all you want. So I was like, okay, just go to Arup then. It's great. Fantastic place. Love it. But it's been 3.5 years now, I still feel intimidated with this rack. And there's a number of issues with it. I love the aspirations, but I think it's still very much aimed at people who have either a never-ending interest in lighting controls, which kind of goes outside of lighting and goes very, very deep. Whereas my interest is in a slightly different realm. I'm more interested in, design. So I'm like, okay, well, somebody told me that you can go home if you haven't heard of Dali Type 8. And I was like, well, is this the key in your design decisions? Is that what makes you a good lighting designer? And I think it's about the experience design. Lighting controls is an important part of experience design. And experience design is what we're hired to do. So maybe we can say it could be the experience of the client, could be the experience of end user, could be experience of people who do the operations, could be facilities management, could be the people in their own spaces trying to fix something. And you can always think about that from the client or end user perspective. An example comes to mind is when you go to the hotel. I don't know how much you go to the hotels, but it happens. And then you try to find all of the light switches and you walk around and you're like, okay, or they say, well, don't have any light switches anymore, you have to use an iPad somewhere there. And you're like, oh, okay. Or we've done a lot of work here at Arup with the facilities management, and this is a completely new perspective. It was very eye-opening what sort of stuff they get to experience when you say, well, everything's going to be Dali dimmable, addressable, and commissioned, and then they see that when they actually don't see that because they tell me, well, there's a password to that computer somewhere there in the server, but I don't know the password because the guy who knows the password is away half of the time. You start thinking about it and, that's not a good design. And something else we kind of learned is in Arup we have this methodology called bus survey. So it asks people about all sorts of the performance of the buildings. So it's part of our building performance system team. And what they showed us once in one of the case studies is they do talk to people how much lighting control is important to them. And you can see, maybe here, I hope you can, that generally better lighting means better building, whereas with lighting controls the correlation is much more scattered, so there is much more variety between people who care about controls, not care about controls. Yet, if you see in this slide being a bit closer, people are definitely happier when they do have controls, and they have ability to, with ease, change their environment, whereas if they don't have it, then they're not as happy. And we do work with this, so this is something which in my team we did a while ago, is giving people more personal control, which, step an exploration in the right direction. But I think maybe sometimes we can start with much simpler things like actually engraving what the light scenes are on the lighting control plates, because this is what I see everywhere I go. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then people go into the meeting room and they're like, this, maybe this, maybe this. And from the experience design, you don't have to know about what's behind all of that, but from the experience design, to me, this seems to be fairly important, yet so often being overlooked. So, to finalize this really short discussion about these things, we can do so much more, and I feel that there's so much more to explore, to design, for us to take part in, but we don't do enough. And why do we not do enough is an open question, and I would like to hear later in the discussion what you think about it, and what can we do better in terms of education, practice, and moving this forward to be a better experience for everyone. Thank you. I guess we're going to have the questions later, right?
That's right. Yes, we're going to have 3 presentations, and we just had the first one, and then afterwards we're going to have a discussion and a practical demonstration of a control system at the end. So thank you. Our second talk is by Ewan Parsons of Speirs Major, and he's going to be talking about Bluetooth integration, and he's going to use Westminster Abbey as an example. So if you'd like to.
So, this presentation is sort of a summary of thoughts, findings, and various other musings that Ian Ruxton, who I'm sure many of you know, and myself have been developing over the past couple of years. And this particular talk, we're looking particularly at wireless solutions, not just Bluetooth, but all wireless solutions to how you control lighting. It's become a very big topic in the industry, and it's become much cheaper. Like everything now can be Bluetooth, could be wirelessly controlled. And really the first question is, like, should it? Is that actually what we want to do? So we have to say, like, right, where are we right now? Where is everything? It is available. It's very fashionable. Like, as I said, you can get wireless lamps from IKEA. Actually, the IKEA wireless lamps are very good. But could you actually connect them into a control system? It's kind of tricky unless you can get into the base code of it. And that's kind of one of the falls onto the next topic. Like, there are so many different ways to do this. Could you use Bluetooth? Zigbee still kicks around. And then even within Bluetooth, like, do you use Staccato Bluetooth? Do you use SigMesh Bluetooth? Do you want to use, let's say, IKEA Bluetooth? Like, well, none of these are interoperable, but they, could all be a potential solution. And everyone is offering it. Everyone wants to specify it. Clients really want it because they've heard the name. Like, they've got Bluetooth on their phone, they've got Philips Hue on their desk. And does anyone really know what this might mean in the long term? Like, how do you actually build this into a working system? So, what are the real motivations for going down the wireless route? Early adoption, because it is the cool thing and we should be on the cutting edge, and we need to push that boundary to find out where it goes. Control, where we can't get it any other way, so retrofitting it in, or are there savings in cost, or are there or the whole Internet of Things thing, the smart building boom that is coming imminently. So the decision in our office, and it'd be interesting to hear other people on it, is that early adoption is actually a very bad idea to do anything. You do not want to be the first person doing anything if you can avoid it, and particularly when you're spending somebody else's money. You really, really shouldn't be doing it. So we decided, that's not a good reason to be doing Bluetooth or any other wireless technology. You want to be doing something that you're confident will work for the next 5-10 years, whatever the life of your installation might be. Which led us to difficult retrofits. There are many, many buildings that we want to upgrade for smart technology, to get dimming in, to get all kinds of stuff in. And particularly in central London, they might be Westminster Abbey, they might be a 1930s office block, they might be, a small retail store just opposite the Old Bailey, where for one reason or another, they can't get in control cabling because of the heritage factor, because of the intervention that would have to be taken out in terms of running in new cabling. There are many good reasons where not having to run in control cabling makes life so much easier, and therefore wireless solution is probably the way forwards to try and make the whole installation of the lighting scheme much better for everyone involved. Which moves us on to installation cost. If you're not running in control cabling, you shouldn't be paying for it. So surely there should be a saving from the contractor to say, well, everything's wireless, so I don't want to pay for you running in DALI cabling, can you take that out of your line item? The problem is they're then going to say, well, actually, we now need to commission a wireless network, and that costs the same amount of money. Will you actually ever see any savings out of it? We're still trying to work this one through on a couple of projects we're working on, and I'll be honest, I don't know if we're actually ever going to see any real saving in cost from the shift across to wireless technology. And the final one is Internet of Things. There is a lot of work being done on the data that can be produced by all items that are within a building. Arup are pioneers in this. And I'll be honest, we haven't really worked out what we can do with it, but being able to get that data out from anywhere in a building could potentially lead to all kinds of developments that we don't know. And so there is potentially a good reason to try and make everything Bluetooth, or to make everything interoperable. But again, we're not entirely convinced that this alone is actually a reason to do it wirelessly, when you could potentially still do this over an old-fashioned DALI system with sensors and copper cabling everywhere. So, lighting control. Wireless controls are misunderstood, they're faddy, they're missold, and the idea that you can just, say, we'll make it all wireless, it'll all be fine, doesn't really hold true, as we found in our own experience. Just a few more facts on things that you have to think about when you're really going into this in depth. Actually throwing around wireless signals is incredibly difficult. Even when you're using old technology, like wireless DMX, that's been around for years, it's still immensely dodgy. Like, there are so many things in the world that make wireless difficult. So, we'll come to it later, but yeah, our case study, Westminster Abbey, it's got massive big stone walls. They don't like RF signals going through them. Nothing will go through. When you've got a metre thick stone wall, that's basically a Faraday cage. It's true that there were some partition walls, but they were completely filled with engineering soot from the Victorian era, which equally stopped all the RF signals. Then also they had a couple of thousand people in there every day. They also absorb all the RF signals. And then there were other things, like they had large bits of metal paneling buried in the wall. Didn't know that was there. It just bounces everything back and causes interference. Oh, and there's a massive RF interference broadcaster beside the Houses of Parliament as well. That's quite fun, because they don't want anyone sending any, unstray, unwanted RF signals over that way. It's a sort of worst case scenario, but anywhere you're going to have interference, particularly as this proliferates more, it's really difficult to try and get a clean signal, and it's even harder to work out why you're not, because it's not as if you can actually test one end of the cable and another and actually say, okay, there's a break. It's invisible. And as I touched upon at the very beginning, there's a kind of a lack of standardization in all of this. Everyone currently has their own flavor of Bluetooth, and they don't actually talk to each other. So Zacata Bluetooth doesn't immediately speak to the SIG-Mesh Bluetooth. I mean, hopefully maybe if the Bluetooth SIG-Mesh gets taken up as kind of like a universal standard, then that will, hopefully some of these things will go away. But I don't think we'll ever get rid of everything, because the SIG-Mesh is never going to be able to do everything that everyone wants to do with an intelligent luminaire. So the future is a hybrid/wireless system. This is a very schematic diagram we did when we were trying to explain to our clients at the Abbey about what they might or could control with their control system, and the idea that it wasn't all going to be one thing or another. Some of it was going to be wired, so all of the old-fashioned choir lights, which have to stay because they're heritage luminaires, will remain wired and still be tungsten or LED equivalents on trailing edge dimmers. Some of it is going to be on Bluetooth. Some of it is already on Bluetooth. Some of it is on DALI. Some of it needs to be on DMX because it's entertainment kit that they need to use for the BBC. Some of it's on KNX. They still have a lot of gas in there which needs to be controlled on KNX relays and other things. There was no way all of this could be done through one system or one protocol. which brings us on to our case study. So for the past 4 or 5 years, we've been working on Westminster Abbey to slowly try and develop and implement a full relighting scheme for the Abbey. We're probably about a third of the way through the install for one phase of it. I have honestly no idea when we'll ever finish this. And there were significant challenges in terms of actually trying to do anything here. Obviously it's heritage grade, whatever you want to go with, it's everything has to be run past both, Historic England, National Trusts, quite a lot of it has to go past the Crown for no particular reason. Like it's difficult, so the idea of throwing in a whole load of new cabling was never going to fly. And they refused to stop anywhere. Like we need to put lighting in, but they weren't going to close. So everything has to be done at night, and outside of any time when they happen to have an evening service or a state occasion or anything else when the building gets closed down. So we're always looking at a phase scheme, and it had to be quick and simple to do bits of it and then easy to join them up onto a system at the end, so we could eventually end up with a holistic renovation. As he says at the bottom, it's a very long-term project. So there are 2 components that I'll briefly chat about. The first one is the chandeliers, which are done. So this was the first phase. There are a number of chandeliers that were gifted to the Abbey by the late Queen Mother. They are from the Guinness family before that. They were a present to her. Don't know where she had them before that. But they are Waterford crystal, and they're huge. Like they have 60 lamps in them, as they were. And as you can see, like they're all tiered up, and they were old-fashioned LED lamps. Interesting note, as soon as they put in the LED lamps, they lost the ability to dim them, so they were on at 100% all the time. So the design aspiration was one, let's be able to dim everything again, that would be nice. And then also see what else could we add. Could we bring back some of the old tungsten candle-like quality that the Abbey used to have through colour tunable technology of some description? The way we made this work was by going across to a Luminetics module, which has integrated DMX drivers. It did also have integrated Bluetooth, but as we found out as we dug into it, their Bluetooth was limited in that you could only ever have 60 Bluetooth modules on a single network. There's 60 modules in every chandelier, and they didn't have a way to have multiple networks of Bluetooth using their protocol. So the only option we had was to have every single chandelier dimmed to the same level and the same color temperature, because there was no other way within their Bluetooth to make it work. I mean, that's just a very classic example, as we found, of like someone's implemented Bluetooth because 60 lamps is good enough for your phone and for your private house. But when you scale it up to something this size, the technology just isn't there, or the software isn't there to support it. So we went back to old school and went down the wireless DMX route, which worked quite well. And then we put on the backbone, a good old-fashioned DMX controller, and seemed like everything was going perfectly fine. And we've managed to get all the chandeliers converted now, and as you can see, we can change them colours, we can make them rainbows, we can do all kinds of fun things with these. And it was all done overnight. It was all fairly easy. We designed a module that basically just clipped into the original sort of lamp holders, hid a few wireless transmitters and receivers within the body of the chandeliers and into the vast attic space of the Abbey. And it all seemed to be working quite fine until we got to about chandelier 10, and we started getting interference between the different transmitters because some of them were too powerful and they were interfering with the other. And so as we said, we had to do a little bit of fettling on the RF signals, trying to tune back the power of some of the transmitters to make sure that our own installation wasn't causing trouble for itself. It all works fine now, but that was quite a tricky one to work through in terms of trying to work out, why isn't this working? It was working, nothing's changed. It was some serious network admin in terms of trying to understand, why was our lighting control system no longer working when it did perfectly fine, yesterday? Bluetooth, as I sort of skimmed over earlier, we went down the idea of using Bluetooth, and in particular Staccato Bluetooth at this point in time, for a lot of the lighting in the Abbey, because there was very little possibility, and in some areas no possibility, of running data cabling through the Abbey. And again, you know, the restrictions on times of working and all the rest of it, we decided that going with a wireless control solution was the best way forwards. But before we moved into this, we were very careful, because we knew about all of the RF issues in that Abbey. We didn't know exactly the scale of them, so we decided we had to kind of find out. Ultimately, the lighting solution is a bespoke pole as opposed to a piece of track. Just that was dictated by the number of fixings we were allowed to put in and the nature of the fixings we were allowed to put in. I don't think the lighting scheme in and of itself will surprise anyone, but the quantity of lights and the technology behind the Bluetooth and how we got all of that to work, I think probably is fairly unique. The first thing that we had to do was do a Bluetooth survey. So we worked with Staccato directly, and we worked out how to do a Bluetooth survey. So we created a load of little boxes, the little white thing in the red circle, that have a battery and a little Bluetooth transponder, and they spew out a message, just again, again, and again, and log every message they receive. And through that we could work out, okay, so we know where these things are, we know where the message has got to, and very quickly we could start plotting out, you know, okay, so we can't get any radio signal into that corner. Why is that? And you start tightening your grid, and eventually you work out how or where the RF barriers are. And I think this is something that, particularly for, you know, retrofit solutions, that we may need to think about more regularly. Like, how are we going to actually test that the system might work? As another example, I recently finished working on the Macallan Distillery up in Scotland, and we were going to have wireless internet everywhere. It wasn't until the lighting controls guy turned up and started trying to work out how he was going to get his, you know, iPad to work, to wander up and down and change the lights. He suddenly worked out, oh, there's a little bit more interference, some more of these hot metal pipes than we thought there were. And overnight, the number of wireless transmitters we needed throughout the distillery tripled. In order to get the coverage in that building, we had to increase the number of transmitters way beyond what we ever thought we were going to need. And similarly in this, we've now worked out that we're going to need a load of repeaters kicking around to try and pick this up. And that's where we've come to. Like, we think that the BLE mesh works well. It has a lot of possibility. We think there are many good reasons to go wireless. It does give us a lot of options and frees us up from having to be restrained by where you can get cables to. There are potential savings to be had. There's potential additional functionality that can be brought in as the Internet of Things and sensors become much more readily available and easy to integrate. But it's not going to be a smooth transition. There are going to have to be a load more skills learned by the trades, both the construction side and the design side, in terms of how to make this thing work. And to an extent, we're all going to have to become a little bit more like software developers and a little bit more like network administrators to understand how to make this work in the long term. Yeah. So yeah, as we say, I don't think that is basically my summary. I don't think that we should go Bluetooth just because we can, but there are good reasons why we should look into it very seriously as an option for the future. I think that's all for now, and we'll be taking questions and thoughts later on. I'd be interested to hear how everyone else has got on with their Bluetooth.
Thank you, Ewan. Our last talk is with two speakers on at the same time. We've got Francesco Anselmo from Arup, who specialises in lighting simulation and writing lighting control tools. And Also we've got Stuart Alexander from Michael Grubb Studio, who's an associate, and he spends his time between light, art and the esoteric. And they both have co-designed a project for Lush Spa that uses an unusual lighting control approach. They're going to talk about that, and then they're going to do some demonstrations. And while they're doing the demonstrations, we can have a discussion, and that should be good. Thank you very much.
Yes, this is the microphone, and we've got roving ones as well.
Oh, right, cool.
So, yeah. So
yeah, we don't normally work together because we don't work for the same company. I just want to say Michael Grubb Studio like collaboration with everyone, and we should make these things happen. We have such fun doing this. It's been really fun doing this project, especially with someone like Francesco, who is some sort of a genius.
No. I'm just going to stay here in the corner.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I need you to. I don't understand the next bit.
I'll come in the right moment.
Okay, fine. This is Magic Lushrooms, and we at Michael Grubb Studio have been working with Lush for a couple of years now. We designed a lot of their retail spaces, and we kind of redesigned the retail spaces to be, we're not very good at the order, I always forget. Retail spaces, we started to treat them more like museums. We hadn't really done retail before in any of our kind of historical influence of design projects. So we started to treat, especially with colour and other things like this, it started to really work using Staccato, obviously. It totally transformed, and people really saw colours in this product they never saw before, and they started redesigning the products and everything, started to work in a completely different way. We're obviously a bit esoteric, so I had a conference call and I decided to do a face mask and completely forgot, so I was stuck with this on my face for half an hour. But we'd like to get involved, and I got involved heavily with the spa team, which is a completely different offshoot of Lush. Not many people even know they have spas, even though it's been around for 10 years. And we were doing a lot of research into hypnagogia, into pulsing lights, into how to induce different alpha, beta wave patterns, brainwave patterns with lighting, mixed with binaural sound, smokes, with all sorts of other things. So yeah, having massage for work is pretty cool, and having your lighting do it at the same time is also really cool. So we got to a point with this project where it kind of got a bit further. We needed a bit more influence. Should we go straight to this?
Yeah.
Right, cool. So we end up here with Florence as well, and this is where I met Francesco on a perfect light trip organised by the Wonderful Light Collective. And we had such amazing food. And this is where you have to come in and say your line, and then I'll say my line. He made this one, so it's like, go on, you ready?
Yeah, ready.
I've got a crazy idea.
Sure, let's do it.
Over food. Right, okay. So we've got this Lush Spa control brief that I put together. They basically wanted something that doesn't exist, and as we've just heard about, a lot in lighting control doesn't exist. It's just one of those things. They wanted something that they could control from remote locations, have all the tracks, audio, 5.1 audio, all the lighting control completely remote to where it was being housed. So we had to come up with an idea of, I tried all these different control systems. We were talking about mailing SD cards at one point, loads of different variations of how this kind of came together. And then they said, well, do you know anyone who could build us this? We want to build tech, because Lush are now a tech company in some weird way. I'm not kidding. They do build some pretty cool tech, and the fact they've pushed this project, I have to say, is really cool. They have a huge digital ethics program as well, which a lot of companies probably don't have. So this project we are going to show you is open source. You've been able to download it and buy all the bits to do it for about 150 quid-ish, depending on how far you went with it, for months now. It's all there for you to go, and you can read Francesco's code, which is kind of like biblical in historical terms in line control. Ethical hardware, we had to go through a lot of research. They wanted, everything to be ethically sourced in the best way we possibly could. I mean, they've even got to the point where they're flying out to China to find ethically sourced digital products for all sorts. Every supplier we speak to working with Lush has to do a non-animal testing disclosure form, which has thrown some surprising people out of the water, even in lighting. We're now working on them with working any kind of as much recycled and recyclable spotlight as possible at the moment, as current project of research we're doing. So they're doing an awful lot of work to actually improve ethics of our built environment. So this is where Stuart speaks to Francesco, which starts a whole chain reaction of events, kind of like sending out your first DMX signal. This is what happens.
Yeah.
Turn the lights on, Francesco.
Okay, I will for sure. All right. Thank you, Stuart. That's
all
good. So yeah, Stuart mentioned me, but I need to mention all the other people in the team, some of which are actually here. So this is the kind of love triangle that we sort of made up as part of this project. So right, sorry.
Yeah.
So Stuart was sort of initiated with this wonderful brief and with keynotes like open source and ethical hardware, open hardware, and so on. So Jim is a client from Lush. And Jim comes from an AV background, and one of the reasons why this project is there is also to really sort out a hard problem that he had to face. So thanks to him as well for giving us this challenge. And Simon from his team was helping us on the cloud side of things. So maybe, I'll talk about that later. But here in the room, we've got Jason, and we've got Andrea as well. And so Jason helped with lots of the coding. So he's actually one of the wonderful code wizards who we can work with here. Paul couldn't come. Unfortunately, he's also another one of the core team has been really us three working more on the coding side. And then Rory and Simona and Mike as well, coordinating all the kind of admin efforts especially. And the result is something that looks like this, and there's a few of those stuff in there, which essentially, as Stuart said, we're going to share with you the code webpage, so on GitHub. So GitHub is a code repository. You can download the cutting files, and with this wonderful axometry put together by Andrea, in fact, so it's just a beauty to look at it. You can get an understanding of where the parts are, all the parts are, and how to assemble them together. And this is what they look on my workbench at home. All kind of assembled, and as Stuart said, is about 150 pounds with all the various components. There is
in our mind, this is more powerful than so many control lighting systems. Mm-hmm. The concept is that you don't have to learn any new lighting control software. You just upload whatever you want. Mm-hmm. So keep whatever software you already know how to use, and just then use this as the device to deploy it. That was my version of. I'm sick of learning new blooming software.
All right. Okay. So once you assemble it, you come up with a box like this. So there's a few of those in there, and this box has few connectors. So it has a DMX connector, so you can put a DMX universe. One right now. It has obviously a network connection. From the network connection, you can connect to stuff like Philips Hue. So these are the two technology we actually have done because of this project. And through the HDMI, you can connect it as well to a sound system. In fact, the key hard problem we had to solve was the guys doing the massage therapy. They want to just hit one single button and have all the light and sound coming at the same time. So, try to do that with lighting control systems, and, you see how hard it is and how much money you get for nothing. You have to spend for nothing. So this is really the kind of outcome. Stuart, we come up with a system, so initially, to actually encode sound. And so how do you encode sound in time events? So what we thought about, why don't we use subtitles? So because there is subtitle software, and so you can move things up and down, and so we come up with this way of calling lights. So you call a U light with a number, so U1, U2, and you kind of send events. And the DMX as well, you can send up to 512, obviously, channels of commands over there. And we showed this one to Stuart, and Stuart wasn't very happy when we showed this to him. So we kind of kept it as as the background technology. It's still quite nice because you can just it's not like drawing, obviously. You need to almost code in a way. So you see his face, right? Yeah. So that's why in the end we added
visual and coding is two different worlds.
Two different worlds. No, it's fine. I like visual too.
Yeah.
So in the end, I asked him, what is the tool that you're going to use? Yeah. And he said, there is this nice piece of software called Visa. And so we had a look at the code, and this software does something quite nice. So obviously you have a timeline. You can put a sound line as well. And then you can use what is called open sound control events. And so we designed a component of the system to receive open sound control events and convert them into our SRT file, which is essentially like this. So you don't need to actually type anymore. You can just draw the color you want in there at the time that you want, and the system will do it for you.
And OSC is kind of a big soft thing. It's a big interaction piece of software. So you don't have to use Visa. You could use TouchSign. You could use so many different things.
Yeah, correct.
And then put it towards
And
this.
put it there.
That was the kind of it's the glue that binds.
Exactly.
Is what is
So
kind of created.
This other system actually works in a nice way. So if you see, we left this kind of flying lead for the USB to connect the DMX part, because you can connect this one to your computer, and then with another piece of the software, you just put in here your DMX console, and you can you can do a bit of live DMX, and this one will record it as well. So you can use it, this machine, as well as a recorder, which is another thing that is quite nice from that perspective.
Yeah, I've always wanted DMX recorders. I've always used this little NTech DMX USB Pro before, which stores 2 minutes maximum of DMX, and that's been amazing. But now I can do hours.
Cool, nice. So the system works in 2 modes. So there is a standalone one, which is the one that I suggest when we kind of release it to the wider public with more documentation, which I think is the bit that is lacking right now. So this is actually a little plug. If anyone likes to write documentation, please join the team. More for this, later. So it has a standalone version. So in the standalone version, you just connect DMX. You connect Philips Hue directly to the Raspberry Pi. And then it creates its own Wi-Fi. You connect your tablet or your phone to the Raspberry Pi, and then you can play music because you've placed it on a USB stick. So the USB stick where you put the media. So it's very simple. You just do all the stuff. You plug it in, power it on, and then hopefully it should be working. But for Lush, we had to do something a bit more esoteric.
Yeah?
Yeah, cool.
Of course.
Yeah. Because we had to use the Internet of Things, to solve this kind of puzzle. The puzzle was this: they wanted someone artistic, right, who plays drop files on Google Drive somewhere in the world, and then these files magically get synchronized down onto all these magical boxes which are spread around the world overnight, so they all are up to date all the time. So that we had to really create a cloud system for doing that, and that's one of the bits that makes it a bit unique in this kind of IoT cloud connected version of the Lushroom, of the Magic Lushroom. You can basically drop something on a Google Drive, and then this one goes down, and you can also remotely see your machines from a website and see whether they're on or off and so on. And then the interaction is really always going to be through a tablet that is in your space. But in this case, you use the Wi-Fi infrastructure or the network infrastructure that is in your system. And in fact, your Philips Hue are not directly connected to the box. They're connected through a network switch, and this is the kind of contraption that you can see, on that side. This kind of Lushroom Dalek that we've brought into the room today. There's a bit of other techie things. It's basically we have a nice software development pipeline where we save our code on GitHub, and it when we save it. When we're happy with it, we push it to a master branch, and the master branch creates the files that then can be automatically as well sent directly to the automatically or semi-automatically or manually, depending on what we want, to the actual devices spread around the world. So the firmware updates are done, or the code application updates are done like this.
So it's quite exciting when we're working on this project, and obviously I'm interested in controlling lights and making fun things happen. Like, I didn't realise how quickly this would spiral totally out of control. and so many things you've never even considered of how you'd have to format all these things. So it's been so amazing to just watch this unravel.
Well, you did a diagram, right?
Yeah, I did a diagram. This was my version in the bottom left. This is how it works. And then this is how it actually works. So when anyone tells you, oh, I should be able to press a button on my phone and it will turn a light on and off, that's how that works.
It's actually a bit more complicated, but no, we make it easy. So the idea is really that it's as easy as you place files onto a folder, and then we use obviously open source, and we use technologies that make it all happen. And I think, I guess, it's time to maybe show how it works, right? Otherwise, so that's.
We did have a wonderful time in Liverpool together for a week, sitting in spa rooms waiting for this to be deployed. And I have to say, Jason probably had the most celebratory moment when he got 2 rooms to play audio and lighting at exactly the same time. So there was
which is what
quite an experience.
Which is what we have now.
Yeah. Oh, we've got it.
We've got it. We've got it synchronized.
No
we got
You've got the whole system?
2 sets of lights.
You've
Yes,
got the whole system?
We have. So yeah, this is our test rig, in fact, where because one of the tricky things about developing digital and physical products is that you need to test them, and testing is not like software. Is all very. It can become quite dirty in a way. So you need to do stuff. So anyway, I invite my glamorous assistant, Jason, to now synchronize his phone onto the.
Oh, so we say
screen,
about what we want to happen with this project?
Oh well, we say later after the presentation.
We need to invite everyone to actually get involved in this a lot more than what is this.
Yes. So Jason at the moment is showing the user interface. So essentially, you just point it to a web address. That is the web address of the Raspberry Pi in this case. And then maybe the first one that So the cleaners that go in the room will have a preset scene called cleaning mode, which will all obviously put the light to the sort of maximum level. If yes, there you go. And they go cleaning mode. Fantastic. So a round of applause, please. Yeah. Excellent. Right, but my favorite one obviously is the test mode, because when you're obviously on site and you need to prove that everything works and commission, you don't just explain it. You need to prove it with a physical test. So I'll now show that this system is not only light, but it's also sound by pressing.
Front center, front right surround, left surround.
Out of 5.
We've all heard this hundreds of times.
So these are testing sequence, right? Lovely.
So tomorrow's world.
No, it is okay. It is okay. So the lighting events that are scripted really on this subtitle file. So if you actually look on the screen, that maybe is something that Jason can also.
AAC audio codec operating at a bitrate of 16.
Perfect. That's good. So you go back to the main menu, and then the room, stays into a nice dim mode. So which is this kind of very warm feeling with those lights over there. So we now, you talked about.
I was very selective about that colour as well.
No, you were very selective. I mean, yes, we've got perfect color coordinates obviously for that. So you talk about hypnagogia and you talk about synesthesia. Yeah. So we're now going to listen to one of the synesthesia, maybe side, which is the one with more color in it, right? And so let's choose which, I don't know.
The current live files, they're all...
So so there is an energized, a humor.
So the concept when you have the spa treatment is it's...
we should have shown the
you choose the mood that you want to go into, and then all the moods, they've developed a very complicated methodology of what colour that mood you need to be put in. And so you're bathed in that light, and how the audio for the treatment is 24 hours in Dorset countryside, and all the audio samples are field recordings mixed with bits of live music that take you through day and night. So there's kind of like the train at Corfe Castle, the birds at Brownsea Island, and I mean, they really took it to another level with this treatment. It's something else, and the treatment's all in time. So we made the lighting kind of feel like you go through a day into a night while you've got your eyes shut, and you kind of feel the light even though you're not looking directly at the light. Here we go.
So this treatment starts with...
skip 4 minutes in or 5 minutes.
Bird song and so on.
Yeah, bird songs.
4 minutes into the treatment.
Yeah.
Go in. Yeah.
Go in the treatment.
Here comes the sun. Is it the old files though?
Yeah, no, it's the file. Yeah, it's the right file. So you can, So you see the light slowly moving and changing, and so the atmosphere in the room totally changes. And there is a DMX track, and there is a Philips Hue track as well. and so it kind of changes. So you can skip maybe a little bit more to see, to show the variety.
If anyone can see the sides, there's like 3 different tones that it's going through. The idea was there's 3 globes on the wall, and the sunrise would kind of shift over you as it's kind of, and then choosing the tones shift and how they flow and affect is quite. That's why I needed the like control real time rather than doing this subtitling, which would have been great. Seeing the colours and being able to set the room for like, right, I want the like flow in time with the music, and like feeling that was really important.
Yeah, maybe we're going to make some of the blue scenes, or like later on, like when.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. But anyway, you got the idea. So you see how simple it is. This lighting control. There's no tinkering with buttons and so on. There are simple menu. Select the menu. You got the treatment done. So as simple as that. So that was really the key element. Making all this technology really disappear. That's lovely. Yeah. That's good.
Should we talk about?
So maybe with this background music.
Yeah. We talk about our desire, because this is open source and Lush want it to develop. We want it to go further. This is one output of how one concept of combining lighting control technologies can come together. So we've obviously got like, this is really powerful. We want to use this on loads of projects. Why the hell am I buying things that are really expensive when I could deploy something that's connectable to the internet? I can check everything away from site. Blah blah. There's so many things, but what we really want to do is get other people with other projects that instead of buying expensive control equipment and commissioning, is start to think about using Arup as a consultancy and the wider sphere, and getting this as a kind of a community to develop it, get the other control softwares into it, get other people to be interested in it. As soon as we start getting more projects involved, this is so powerful, and this is really where we're kind of inspired by this early internet, how technology should be. People should come together and just make cool stuff happen. And it's kind of like we're in an amazing opportunity where we've developed this so far, and it isn't just ideas on the ground, it's deployed, and it's working in Liverpool and Shinjuku so far. So other sides of the world from each other, literally. And that's how we want this to develop. So what we're thinking about doing to kind of get that is, it's really complicated, and I still find this overwhelming to kind of work with. We're thinking about doing a podcast that would be an introduction to how to do it and how you learn about it, and then doing a series of workshops or other elements where we get people together to kind of build it and work with it. But obviously there's already a level of knowledge you need to have of DMX or lighting or what people could do with it. And then it's like, do you deploy it? So we're kind of in these questions. So that's why we just want to open conversations.
Yeah, that's cool. So,
we think a podcast might be the best way to get the information out. It's like quick.
Yeah.
We want it to be quite punk.
We've got some roving microphones, so in case someone wants to give some early feedback already or give some idea, I put on the screen while maybe you start raising your hands, hopefully.
Or is it going to be like at the beginning of Star Wars with your code?
Yeah. Right. So now I've just put the page. So this one is on GitHub Lush Digital, Lushrooms. And so from here you can have access to the bill of materials and, order the stuff, and there are all the different components that make the project. But we're aware that better documentation is to come. So that's why, before I did say, if we all work together, if someone is interested into testing it out and then feeding back and writing something, is going to be super useful. The other idea that we have is doing workshop as an example. So maybe other lighting situation can benefit from, I don't know, there are going to be always lighting events, we can organize something, but we want to really get your feedback on that. So anyone? No?
Thanks.
Okay, one question over there. Right, so I'm going to...
Test. Hold on. It's got a roaming mic.
Yes.
Good. Hi, I'm Tim Warner. I do lighting design and controls. A little bit closer. That's better. And I can see directly out of this. I was just in Lush at Waterloo, and I went, that's odd. Why was I there? But I came this evening, and it all connects up somehow. So I listened to that. What I found was I've met with Zicado already for 2 hotels I'm working on, and it fits straight into spas. They're no longer hotels, they're spas. And it would be interesting to see. I came up against the Bluetooth issue as why are we spending so much money on controls when it just sits there, gets programmed, and sits there. And so that it can be interactive and be changed by those who will use it at the end.
Yes.
Similar to our first speaker. So that intrigues me. I mean, the Bluetooth, I just came up hard up against, well, geez, all these devices are out there, and suddenly you're up against an app. Do you have one? Do you not? Who wants an iPad in their hotel? They've just arrived from New York. They just want buttons. So there's a button side of things if you want physical controls. And then there's the app. Well, if you're future thinking 2 years ahead, should there be one sitting in the background ready to go? That kind of thought. So those two things came straight out of what you presented, and I went, they could both coexist. And I can see that what you've developed is the part that I couldn't. The part where you hit app development requirement. And what should that be? It looks very clear to how you've done the legwork on that. So 10 points is where you're taking, because you need the joined up parts, and that's very difficult at this point in history. You know, you need this.
I think that's the bit that's most frustrating. Is just that's why it's better to work with someone and make it open source and start talking openly about lighting controls and just make
and
life
of course
better.
with Zaccato, I appreciated that they are doing that.
I think you've talked open. We wanted to bring in Zaccato. We just didn't need it as a specification for this project. Otherwise, we would have built that in. Maybe I should have just got one module under a bed or something.
Well, they had all the configuration software. You could do design. You could do lighting design very clearly and easily. And set up everything on a computer. Which is exactly what you don't want at the end of the day, because half of the control systems I specify were historical ones where you would end up owning it and not need to pay a service engineer to come and change a light level. I mean, I've done hotels way back when I had to fly in an engineer just to set up I won't mention, but just to set up a timer. I wanted to dim the lights on a restaurant over time. So, you know, it would be controlled as a theme, and it's invisible, but it's part of the feel, like you're doing. And everything was, I could set up everything in those days manually with an input device, which was quite interesting. But subsequently to that, there have been laptops, computers, and everything then became sort of part owned by you. The person who would go, as per our first speaker, was just who's going to use it. Well, there's two groups of people using it: those who would like to set it up, and as lighting designers, normally the levels and the feel, and just like you've been doing, and then the end users who may need to maintain it as well, or want to change it after you've gone and disappeared, you know. And now I guess you can do that remotely as well. So what you've done looks very impressive, and I'll certainly be there with my hand up.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, we need to invite, I guess, the other speakers as well, so you know, to pick up. And maybe I don't know if if you you can or you can just stand up and stay close to us, you know, whichever way you prefer. Do you prefer to sit or it's so any question for any of us?
I think we've got one more question.
Okay,
let's go.
Could I just make 2 points about people? People do not like flicker. The drivers you've got there are producing considerable temporal light artifact. Second point is, some people like coloured light, some people don't. And if you ask people, and I've done this, to select the colour they find most comfortable reading, most normal, healthy observers will choose a light that's on the daylight locus. But individuals who have migraine with aura will choose a very different colour, well away from the daylight locus. So there's a neurological component to what people like, and I suspect also what they don't like. So in order to, if you're doing general lighting, but people in general need to bear that in mind. But the first thing I would argue is we don't want flicker on those drivers. Is there anything you can do about it?
Well, yes.
They don't flicker on the. I think this is just a mock-up where we've just got bits together to show you the tech rather than the full-on flicker-free environment.
The Philips Hue.
And the colour, we had to have colour because I was told as a client every treatment needs to go from this colour to this colour and be very specific type of green and blah 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 blah. And you're paying for a spa treatment where Lush have designed this environment and this atmosphere for you. So it's just the project that we had in the hand, and someone has asked for that, and so we have to deliver it.
They'll find the colour preference very idiosyncratic and neurologically based.
I know, but
ask a question?
might make people feel good sometimes.
I think this was a way of realizing this project with the part that we worked on was simplifying the interaction with the control system, and then being able to communicate with as many control signals as were in the project, which in this case were 2. But really the bit of focus is the simplifying the interaction and not seeing all these moving parts, right? So obviously, yes, if you want to think of it holistically into every single component, then yes, the selection of the driver, the selection of the light, everything needs to be taken into account. It's not the focus of today's conversation, but is a worthy conversation that maybe we can bring in another event. Yeah, right. Thank you.
Right. Should I do a quick Bob? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So I'm gonna do a quick comment on what I thought was so amazing in your approach in this case, which I think you kind of gracefully left behind, is how much more simplified in some ways, but more difficult in some other ways, and how much more cost efficient the solution is to what you would do otherwise, the normal clunky big DMX things with another box and another box and another box behind it. And what's also interesting that you're trying to create like a community and more people using it, which means that over time it has a potential to evolve, to have other people to build on what you built. And kind of on the back of this, I have a question to Ewan, because you have a very long-term project in there using technology which is very young. Did you build in any sort of protocol where you have road to go there every couple of years and check that the solution they're putting in is still the most relevant and the most making sense?
I mean, our involvement in that project will be ongoing for some years, and we have some form of contractual involvement to keep going on it. We're actually the controls installers for that particular job. So we've taken, and we're writing the code and integrating it and doing all of that work. I think one of the things that we had to work with Staccato on was looking more towards the sort of pushing forward stuff. Like, we are working on young technology there. When we first started doing the install, the Staccato modules weren't on SIG mesh. They were all on Staccato Bluetooth. They only just released the SIG mesh about a month ago, and then we had to actually input that up to all of the ones we'd already installed and configured. It didn't work quite the way we wanted it to. We got there, but it's just like, even things when you've already thought ahead, we need to do this, we are going to have to upgrade and change and maintain this. Those systems are unfortunately somewhat dependent upon having a group of people around who remember what they did, so they can work out how to undo it to do the next thing. And that's the real challenge with all of this stuff, is trying to make it truly open source and truly free and easy and solid, such that it isn't dependent upon me or you or anyone else in this room to fix it 20 years down the line.
Yes, correct. Yeah, so this is really the ethos about opening it. With Lush, I mean, it's really to their credit. They wanted to pay us, but also to make this project really more open, so that actually, even if we disappear or our interest changes, there is still a legacy into it, and that is part of choosing open source as well. It's creating the community is exactly the bit that is the most important at this stage, because now that it's there, in order to evolve, in order to be maintained, in order to become stronger and more versatile and better, it's really the only approach. If we take an approach, now we choose a manufacturer and it's going to be their interface and so on, we totally fail, because it will only have a certain lifetime, and then it will evaporate, like the old system that this gentleman was talking about. So right now it is really everyone's ownership, right? So that's the sort of idea. Yeah.
I guess it's kind of like one of those things. Human civilization isn't very good at dealing with long-term problems, and so it's kind of starting to think like, oh my god, there might be some lighting control. We could build in all the situations to this, and then over time there'd be a community that could work on it rather than just individual people. It's kind of our dream.
Can I ask the question that it seems to me that both presentations have been about performance space, what I would call performance space, where the population is transient. So really you can, in some senses, you can impose your own will onto that. How transferable is that technology to spaces like offices, hospitals, schools, where you have an occupier who is there for 8 hours a day, and therefore the ambience of the space becomes more important than perhaps the control. One of the weaknesses of control systems has always been that the people that it's there to help don't like it because it doesn't perform in the way that the occupants would like it to. And so you've got two different things, and I think it's wonderful what you're doing, but I wonder how transferable that is to a wider market.
It's your project.
Okay, yeah. So yes, it's a kit of parts. It's made out of different components. So you see a few of these technical components there. So the actual technology can run any software in it, any control software in it. So essentially, it is as good as the code you write. And so if we had a client that asks us, that is bold enough like Lush was, to say we want to do controls in a different way, and we want to do them in a way that fulfills these use cases, this interaction. We want it to do this during the day. We can model time, change of time of light in this case. We can easily model static scenes as well if we want. And so the reality is, to answer your question, we need to have a challenge and then go in and resolve it. But there are all the kit, all the parts already in there to allow to do this, because it's just, we are as free as writing the code that we want.
I think you're missing the point. You say you've answered the question. You sounded more like a politician.
Okay, yeah, maybe. Okay. Ask the question again.
The question is, when you've got a fixed occupier in a space for a certain length of time, their requirements are going to be completely different from those in the spaces that you've demonstrated. If you've got someone lying down who wants to be massaged and taken out of this world, and you impose upon them a colour and a sound, they're going to think it's wonderful if they're paying 150 quid for half an hour. But what about the office worker, the nurse, the teacher, the children, and the effect of what we now call well-being?
Yes, sir.
We used to call it lighting design for occupants. Now it's well-being. What are you going to do for them? Because your code will require to be learning about 50 people's different requirements.
I think you've got to come in. This is built for a consultancy to deliver sophisticated lighting controls that nothing else can deliver. There is nothing. I'm sure there's a great system probably in place for those standardized variations of those places. If you're a client and you want something different for that kind of environment that is really specialized, then you have to find something that can be created. And this is what this type of version of lighting controls is saying, is that we don't want to deal with end manufacturer, end box. We've broadly got some of the market covered. We say this is for specialists who really want something amazing. So it depends who came and asked for that.
Yeah,
and then you could do everything. You could have specific sensors. You could have temperature. You could have solar blinds. Everything put into it, just depending on what your space is.
Yes, but the way I would approach a question like that would be just understanding what the project is, who the person are. So one of the projects that Innessa showed before is a project where we designed a user interface where there were the name of people, and those people could choose the color. I mean, the spectrum of the light, the intensity of the light that they were using, in a one-to-one relationship. So that was a way of answering a specific question to the project that was relating to a range of people by empowering them to do what they actually want in the space without us scripting in advance. In this case, we scripted it in advance because that was the project. But in the other project, we totally left it to the occupants to change completely, in a free form, even being totally open to the fact that the space could look very strange and messy, but this is because people like it. So that was an approach maybe that might be more similar to what you have in mind, but I'm happy to discuss it later, maybe over drinks. Yeah. Good, thank you.
Can I quickly add to this? To me it seems like the main value of this approach is that it's a slightly different approach. It's a much more of a DIY approach, and it answers some more specific questions about space. So if we had a different space, we would answer different questions and the product would be different, but we can yet employ the same digital ethics and the hardware ethics. And I think that's what I see this project is going forward. You don't just take this box and put it in an office or in a hospital or in a living room, but you approach it with the similar idea that for not a lot of money and for a lot of flexibility, somebody who is using this space can have so much more.
I mean, I can also speak on a very similar line. So Macallan Distillery has recently, it's a big factory. It's a very, very big factory. It is also one of the biggest theatre installations I've ever worked on. I mean, it has something like 600 colour change theatrical luminaires in there. It's a distillery. It has a full show control system in there. They can do all kinds of weird stuff to make the tour experience really exciting. Also, it has some offices. It's also a big factory. I have big floodlights that turn on so you can get your 200 lux and your 0.4 uniformity everywhere. All of this is one control system. It's a very expensive control system. It's not 150 quid. This would have been amazing, I'll be honest. But
here's my card.
But the other thing that we left them with is we did put quite a bit of money on that project into software development to make the user interfaces, which is the key touch point for everyone, bespoke to that project. And I've been back many times, and they're changing the lights a bit, and they do all kinds of stuff up there, and they're really settling into it. They've moved stuff around, they've reconfigured it without us having to go back, because it's all on nice sliders on their interface. But ultimately, it still works the way they want. And it's not that it can do all the whiz-bangs, but the same system can also do really, really simple clunk, I want the lights on, clunk, I want the lights off, and the emergencies and all the other stuff. The power of what these guys have developed could do everything with a few more widgets and a bit more code here and a bit more there. It's just not quite there yet.
If you wanted to...
Sorry, Peter, there was some of the people behind asking the question before, so maybe it's better if they...
Yeah, the last presentation, great concept, but I can't help thinking that, certainly listening to what other people are saying, I think we're having similar thoughts, is what you've actually done is you've created an AV installation, in effect, for Lush, with the ability to control it remotely from anywhere in the world. So you can put something on a cloud and say synchronize at 4 a.m. when nobody's about and change all of the scenes, and that can happen in all the different time zones over a 24-hour period at 4 a.m. in the morning. If this was global, let's say you had 2,000 outlets globally and it was on every high street, so to speak, could it actually synchronize all of those stores? Have you actually stress tested it, or is it just doing the 2 stores at the moment?
So it's not that it's synchronized like that. It's like, imagine you've got an iPod and you want new tracks on your iPod, so they download overnight. So then whoever you want, if you've got, we did talk about this for all the launches they had for different new products. We want all the lighting to do this for a new launch product. Then at that time in the morning, we upload to different variation places, and they'll be able to play that new file when that's loaded. It just if it's a time based.
No, I understand how it works. I can assure you.
Yes. So
if you're saying it's synchronizing, you wouldn't.
So let's say we were synchronizing the time codes for West Coast USA.
Right.
You're probably going to be San Francisco, Portland, LA, blah, blah, blah. And you've probably got maybe 30 stores in that one time zone. Could it do them simultaneously?
We could, with a little bit more code. So I mean, we're already kind of thinking, NTP, blah, 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 there you go.
I mean, it's like version 1 of... It could go if no one's asked that request. No one's asked the request.
No, but it's possible.
We can do anything. I mean,
this is the interface to actually. These are all the Lushrooms working now. So the green ones are the ones that are active, and the red ones are the ones that are offline. And we can go into this one, for instance, in Tokyo.
Yeah. What do they have?
Sorry?
What treatment did they have last?
We can have a look. I don't know. Let's have a look. So you see in here, you can go inside the code of the container of the player, and then you can have a look at the logs, and then you can see if it is running. So this one at the moment is not running, so I can see in the log. So you can actually go and see each one of them and understand what is going on.
I was more interested in your interface from your cloud as a global entity to all the individual stores where there might be clusters in certain populous areas.
Yeah, so at the moment it's not there, but this is what we have. We have a remote management just for, it's not for managing lighting events, but for managing the health of the devices. So, we know if one is working or not, and, and all this sort of things.
Okay.
So, and it's all based as well on open source tools.
It's the next part I was going to say, it's not really it's more of a statement. For the projects to be commercially viable, you're going to be choosing luminaires with a particular protocol that's available on the market. It could be DALI, it could be DMX, as you say. This is what you're going to buy commercially. You're not going to buy something that's specially made, otherwise the project isn't going to fly with the QS. So the business end of everything you do is a open protocol, but more of a traditional open protocol. It's actually the networking you're using, which is open source like Pi and so on and so forth. So you're using off-the-shelf components and you're bringing it down to stuff that most people have probably heard of when you put it all together, is my interpretation. And that's quite a good way to go,
Yeah. So
it's more about the code, getting into the code so other people can work on it,
exactly.
provided they're a coder.
Yes, so it's very modular, the code right now, the way it's written. So we are thinking already of adding Staccato, as Stuart said, and adding as well actually IKEA, because IKEA lamps, they also have one that is much cheaper than Philips Hue, and I think Lush is interested into that as well. And I've got it at home, so
otherwise a great exercise in taking a client brief and turning it into
exactly.
something.
No, exactly.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
There was this lady. Do you want to ask?
Come on.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think I have to reflect a little bit more.
All right.
So,
Just one quick question. When calculators first came out, they used single precision, and then they had to invent a whole lot of new calculators that were double precision. Is there a way of future-proofing this so that you, as the cost of data transfer goes down and down, you can make it with loads of redundancy in it, so that if you want to use an analogue of an artist, you could sell lots of paints, and most people might just paint their walls pastel colours, or you can be an artist and paint a painting with it. So if this was cheap enough and had enough redundancy in it, a lot of people would use it for very ordinary things, but some people use it for special things.
It is a DMX universe.
Yeah.
It's been around for a while. So lighting technology hasn't really evolved as fast as. For control technology, there is cool stuff out there like Bluetooth, etc. But DMX is still at the bottom.
What you just said though applies more than to the contraption we've come up with to actually the Raspberry Pi as an example in itself. So this is a tool that has been designed for low cost and kind of very versatile programming applications, and because it was designed like that, we could, and that level of redundancy of what it can actually do, we can use it for doing these things at a very low cost as well. And so in a way it is already future-proof from the perspective, from a hardware perspective, let's say, because of the choice of the technology, because the technology is readily available and it is really ubiquitous. If we had to choose a specific board or even make our one, it wouldn't have been the same. And so we can do this because there is something like that already. That's it. Okay, look at that.
I'm Simon White from Oberland. Two questions, slightly perhaps a little bit off topic, but one is, could this hook up to CCTV cameras?
What for?
Well, forget the therapy rooms, but just generally speaking, obviously we're very much surveyed, aren't we? Especially in this country. And I don't know whether this might be a simpler way for councils, police and authorities for, using it with CCTV. But that's just, I don't know, off the wall idea.
Yeah, I can tell you the idea that we have to expand it right now. So one idea based on Lush itself is to have a scent dispenser, so that while you have your therapy, you can also have a fantastic smell of, I don't know, rose petals or something. So the idea is really this. It's a software, it's a versatile hardware, and it's a software platform. And so things can be added just the sort of creativity is the limit, right?
I guess that's the way I've probably read it. If you're saying CCTV, it'd be like, right, let's track people so when they come up the staircase. No, wait, hold on. I meant tracking in a good way. As they come up the staircase, we turn the lights on in time with them coming up the staircase, but in a creative, interesting way. How do we get the sensors into this to make it more an interactive device rather than lighting device? Because already we could...
It's having that central control.
5.1 audio doing that kind of thing could be so cool. And I mean, two of them could talk together, so you could go through a variation of spaces as you interact or your body moves, then it could create a different environment. I mean, it's the fundamentals are there, which is in consultancy terms the hard bit. It's just a little bit of actually having a project and then doing it.
And if you want to contribute an open source project, we're here. Stuart has cards.
Okay.
And you remember?
And the other thing that hasn't been mentioned this evening is Li-Fi. I mean, is Li-Fi, is that... Do you think there's a market for it? Obviously, it's around. You can get proprietary downlighters, I believe, that use Li-Fi. I just wondered if...
I guess the best line of the night, early adopting, don't do it. On something like Li-Fi, I'm scared to death of that.
I always think of the old Betamax and VHS. Some people might remember that in this room, but, one was superior, but it didn't take off.
Just to see a good application case for it.
Yeah.
What is a good application case for it which tried and tested technology doesn't do?
I finished my question.
Just sort of picking up on the Li-Fi. There was a presentation just the other side of the summer break from our good friends in Edinburgh, and their story's changed, which is kind of interesting to what you've got here, because a year ago, 2 years ago, Li-Fi was the platform, because it was the only way you're going to be able to do it, because we hadn't got the bandwidth and all the rest of that. That story has now changed to one of about security, that there will be spaces where the nature of Li-Fi ensures a level of security that none of this can, and therefore it seems as if they're shifting their story, that Li-Fi is part of the puzzle. It's another piece of the jigsaw, which means that, interestingly, you might be looking at how you take your magic box and integrate Li-Fi into it at some point.
I mean, this essentially tonight has turned into a lot of discussion about networking of various things, and believe me when I say we were raked over the coals when we proposed Bluetooth to go into Westminster Abbey because of potential penetration by various people for whatever nefarious purposes they had. And there is a continual sort of problem with security. Like, as soon as someone can get onto the network somehow, it might be that they need to break into the building, find the copper cable, cut it, splice it, but they can get into it. And you're just trying to make it as difficult as possible and deciding, do you really, really need it that secure? So, you can probably, without too much difficulty, break into your neighbour's Wi-Fi router and steal their internet if you really wanted to. But most people don't have the skills or really have any, they don't want to. Why would I?
It does come, if you're coming back to the security question, the way that there's the classic story of professional hacking at the moment at Credit Suisse or somewhere in Canary Wharf, and the guy managed to get into the office room where the HR department was, found the girl on her first day and basically said, can I use your computer to print something for a second? Flashed a USB into the drive, got all the information off, downloaded it, and then 2 weeks later gave Credit Suisse the CEO's health records. So it's totally. There are ways in through the system, and we were saying we're connecting back to Lush's head servers in Poole, etc. But I think you came up with quite a good solution for this.
Well, we just use a certificate authentication, end-to-end certificate authentication. So,
it's this thing, isn't it? It's the small USB.
It's on the other. I mean, it's not in here.
It's not, it's not secure. This one.
Yes.
Don't touch that. Don't put that in your house. Have your kettle going off in the middle of the night.
Any more questions? Huh? Okay. Oh wow. Okay, good questions, right? Because I've got some questions for you at the end. Right.
Did you make it?
Yeah. No, I just want to.
Hi. Just a quick question, basically. Let's say you have 50 different stores, like you have in this case.
Yes.
Are you limited by the manufacturers you're using in each store? Because I'm assuming, let's say, for example, the audio-video device. Each audio-video device would have a different code to activate different functions, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
Which means if you have different stores, if they have the same system, it's fine. If it has a different system or different drivers for lighting or whatever, it would start to be a problem.
At the moment, there are minimum features that are required, which is the audio system needs to have a HDMI input. That's all. So HDMI input, actually, now it can be stereo input because we've done stereo jack as well. But the first requirement was Dolby Surround 5.1. On the lighting side, it was the specification that this guy came up with.
DMX, and I mean we can get LED strip with DMX most places in the world by now. And Philips Hue was just a quick fire because we had some serious timescale and logistics issues. So we were like, can you build Philips Hue? And very quickly, and it solved an awful lot of issues and control cables, etc. Just for random situations we get thrown in. On retail, it's very different from other environments.
But what I'm thinking though is you need to standardize it throughout all the stores for it to work correctly, or else then you would need to sort of almost partition it.
So the actual audio systems are slightly different in every single store. So because the standard is, audio and video standards are already ubiquitous, right? Lighting standard, there are too many standards maybe, and so that's why we have a lot of drivers. So what we would do really is, does the store really need to have that particular system? Yes. Do you want to pay for writing an add-on? Yes. And then we release it as an open one, and it kind of enriches the overall ecosystem, right? So you have a project, you want to use it. Yeah, let's do it.
So it can also detect which system it actually is in that store.
Yeah. So right now, because we only support Philips Hue on the in this kind of discovery mode. So we try to make the interaction very simple. So the actual box looks out of the configuration file, looks for a Philips Hue. If it doesn't find it, it tells you need to push the button to synchronize it. So if we have another system, it might need a different synchronization method. So we will come up for something that is easy enough to be almost touch-free. So the only, when we do our workshop, we will explain how the configuration works, because that is one element of telling, you need to tell the name of the device, right? So you name the device and do a few things. Once that is done, it just works, yeah.
Make it easy. I'd like to go back to the first principles. And
Yes.
You started the evening with a very good talk which said why, in effect, don't we use lighting controls effectively?
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't really think about all the people that are involved in the process, from getting it into a building, whatever that building is, and who has to use it, and what knowledge they need to use it. So you've come through to a logical conclusion and suggested a way forward in terms of having an open source solution that potentially provides you with the user interfaces that might be usable and provides you with the service and repair people who might be more available than the current marketplace. So you're looking at a market upheaval or market disruption if you take your ideas further.
Market revolution.
Yes. Well, disruption is the word we use in marketing.
Yes.
So in the middle, you've got the other issue though with the technology that you're using, which is Wi-Fi. And there's this sort of expression about whispering in a discotheque. Have you heard that? Yeah.
We don't use only Wi-Fi. We use
I know.
Yeah.
But it's still a great concern because you've got governments changing the frequencies you can use over time. I've just had to change my microphone like this at home because I can't use the old bandwidth. I don't know if you've checked these ones out, whether they're legal or not.
I guess the 2.4 gigahertz will stay free. That is all around the world. So
but the whole of the theatre world were up in arms and couldn't stop it.
Right.
So those are the sort of challenges you face. But I think you need to start with Innessa's work.
Yeah.
And really analyse that whole business, because I feel today I've always been sitting in on a product management meeting at my old works, which was Philips, discussing how this technology is brought forward and how you take it to market, but what the market needs and all those sort of things. And you all need to sit together and actually exchange your thoughts. Just a comment.
I do think it's quite an important thing that we're all, from a consultancy, working on project basis rather than in a company trying to sell something. Our time and our knowledge is basis, like, we work on a wide range of various projects. Francesco's knowledge of lighting control is just ridiculous. You work on this project's another level. It's something, could be something really good.
Okay, thank you.
I hope it happens.
Yeah. More questions? Yeah. There were a few more questions as well over there.
So, Stuart, you talk about consultancy.
Yeah.
My question is, having these new technologies and open technologies, would you think about stretching this consultancy into actually think about the data you're collecting? What use is it going to be for Lush in their retail business?
Yeah, so Lush didn't ask us to actually collect data because they are against that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we're very happy to work with them because they have sound ethical basis. So it's good. So we don't want to gather, but
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
So what I'm seeing there is just you have a full database of every single room they have around the world.
No, this is not a database of room. That is a database of machines. Because
but that machine is.
They already know who's having what spa treatment and how many they're having. So
Yes.
and at what times.
No,
I guess if you went, I don't know.
This is
what
only
kind
for
of
the
data.
benefit of managing the machines and doing firmware upgrades and so on. And it is not actually logged into a central database for doing. It is if they want to build a maintenance system, we could do it. It is possible. But from that perspective, they're very adverse to tinkering with data of. People data or kind of doing retail intelligence or all these sort of things. So, and that's why they open, it was great to work with them. They would even pay us to open up the actual project. Having said that, obviously, if there are interesting challenges which have a good end or, a worthwhile investigation which can be added to this, it is possible for us to do. Anyone can really take this because it's released. We need to put the license files, but the idea is to release it under MIT license. So anyone can take it and actually build their own commercial projects if they want. So it's also possible for anyone to base it on us and do whatever they want. So we just want to keep it as open as possible so that more people use it. Yeah. More questions? Yeah.
We didn't really answer.
No. Yeah. No. So do you want to answer the question?
Yeah, I just have a question about scale. It's a wonderful presentation. I'm going to download and make one.
Great.
Absolutely.
Good.
So how would you translate, because at the moment it's controlling a series of rooms, how would you translate it to a project of scale?
Of scale, yes. So, the scale is already there for the use case that we have. So one challenge that we had, for instance, was halfway through the project. There was, Jim, our client, said, well, we have this issue where we would like to control 2 rooms at once because they want to make big parties between the 2 rooms. And so we said, oh, well, is it possible? And, we had a nice conversation and, said, well, let's try NTP, so Network Time Protocol Synchronization. And, I know it's not going to be perfect, but maybe it's going to be good enough. We did it, and after a little bit, in the end, it sometimes it doesn't work, but most of the time it does. And so we resolved that issue when it came, and it was an issue of scale in a way because it was a different scenario. So from the perspective, features can be attached depending on what scale means in this case. So it's not a system that can do a traditional lighting control right now. So it can't because it's not designed for that. But it could potentially because there is all the engine to do that. So the scalability thing that we have thought though is how do we do remote application updates? So we have it because we can do that. How do we remotely manage these devices because we want to know what goes on, and if something goes wrong, we want to be able to see them remotely without having to ask someone. The other actually scalability thing is that we agreed with the client that there must be a person on site who we can interact with to turn off the machines, or when we want to roll up a firmware upgrade, they can go and have a look and check that everything works, as an example. So we can't go to Tokyo every time they want to do a change. I mean, well, I would love to, but yeah. But so I think these scalability elements can be solved if there is a dialogue, but because we have a collaboration. It's not because here is the product and we go away and you sign a maintenance contract, and so it's more that. And maybe in the future these kind of collaborations are really the way forward if we want to do this project. I mean, this project is very special because it's a special client, it's a special lighting designer, it's a special kind of company as well, and we get the freedom of doing it. And in the end it's special because obviously it can be made open source, and part of the scalability, I think, is being open source. In fact,
when I say scale, I mean thousands of addresses.
Thousands of addresses, yeah. Not what? Oh, you mean from a lighting perspective, right? Right.
What, as in the DMX universe?
Yeah.
Or thousands of value.
Right.
Yeah.
Scale like that. Yeah. No, there isn't a network connectivity between devices apart from the time synchronization of these two ones right now. So nothing more. But if you have a challenge, challenge us. And yeah.
I'm sure Francesco and very impressed.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Is this on? Yeah. So I say it's very difficult to ask a technical question, and obviously this is a tool we're discussing rather than all the possible applications of a tool.
Correct.
So it's kind of like maybe pointless to discuss the pros and cons of like a hammer.
Yes, correct. Yes, totally, yes.
But so it's not really a question. It's more like an analogy, if you will.
Okay.
Like how I'm hearing it.
Right.
So I don't know if you know this, but in Home Alone 1, when Kevin is like pulling on the strings and trying to fool people on the outside that there's somebody at home in every room.
Yes.
And there's all kinds of things happening, and he's all controlling it with every limb.
Yes.
Like from that to like the Star Trek simulation room where they go in and like talk to Leonardo da Vinci. So that's kind of like, where, right? That's the trajectory.
Nice analogy.
That is incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll get you to write our marketing material. Yes. On this note. Okay.
Wow.
Okay, good. If there are no more questions on this note, I want to ask you a question. So who is going to try it? I mean, we heard from Arvon, so yeah, number one. Who else is going to try it? Okay, number one. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good. Okay. Done. Drinks on the other side. You want to say something?
I'd just like to say thank you to Florence, Bronwyn and Saffron of Arup for letting us come here. Thanks the SLL's Roger Sextant and Juliette Rene, and the speakers Innessa Demidova, Ewan Parsons, Francesco Anselmo and Stuart Alexander. Could you give your badges back as you go out? Thank you.